Watchers from beyond. For 3,000 cycles, the collective had observed humanity from the shadows. They were the galaxy's oldest civilization, born when the universe was young and stars burned brighter. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. Their understanding of reality so complete that they could bend space, stock time, and peer into the quantum foam itself. The collective did not interfere. They only watched, recorded, and studied. That was their sacred purpose, to document the rise and fall of civilizations across the cosmos. Humanity intrigued them. These strange bipedal creatures from a small blue world had appeared barely 10,000 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. Yet they possessed something the collective had never encountered in any of the 7,000 species they had cataloged. Emotion. Not simple reactive patterns like fear or aggression, which many species displayed. Humans had complex, powerful emotions that drove them to do impossible things. They called it love, hope, courage, compassion. The collective had no words for such concepts. They observed with cold curiosity, trying to understand. The research station. Observer Talnex floated in his meditation chamber aboard Research Station Terminus 9. His consciousness expanded across 17 dimensions simultaneously. He had been assigned to the Human Observation Project for 800 cycles now, long enough to become what his peers called contaminated by excessive exposure to emotional beings. You spend too much time watching them, his colleague observer Marin had warned him once. You are beginning to think in their patterns. That is dangerous. But Talnex could not stop. Humans were fascinating in ways that defied logic. They created art for no practical purpose. They formed bonds with other beings that had no survival benefit. They sacrificed themselves for abstract concepts like justice or freedom. Most puzzling of all, they grieved. When a human lost someone they loved, they experienced profound psychological pain. Their bodies reacted as if physically wounded. They could not eat, could not sleep, could not function. Some humans never recovered. The grief consumed them for the rest of their short lives. The collective found this utterly illogical. Death was natural, inevitable, universal. Why would any species evolve to be damaged by accepting this simple truth? Yet humans did more than grieve. They remembered. They built monuments to the dead. They told stories about those who were gone. They carried photographs, kept possessions, visited graves. They kept the dead alive in memory with such intensity that it seemed almost real. Talnex had watched countless humans lose loved ones over the centuries. He had observed their tears, their anger, their slow healing. He had documented it all with scientific precision. But he had never understood it, not truly. Not until the day everything changed. The day the stars went dark. It began with a cosmic phenomenon that the collective instruments barely detected in time. A rogue quantum wave, born from the collision of two black holes in a distant galaxy, was racing toward the Milky Way at near light speed. When it hit, it would cause what the collective called a phase shift. All matter in its path would be displaced by 0.001% into an adjacent dimension. For most life forms, this would be unnoticeable, a tiny quantum adjustment that would have no practical effect. For humanity, it would be extinction. Humans were different. Their consciousness, their sense of self, was tied to quantum processes in their neural structures in ways the collective still did not fully understand. A phase shift would shatter that delicate quantum coherence. Every human in the galaxy would die instantly, their minds simply ceasing to exist, while their bodies remained alive, but empty. The wave would reach Earth and its colonies in exactly 73 hours. The collective held an emergency council. 5,000 observers gathered in virtual space, their consciousness overlapping as they debated. We must inform them, Talnex argued. They deserve to know. It violates our prime directive, Observer Kalen countered. We do not interfere. We never have. There is nothing they can do anyway, added Observer Wren. Their technology cannot stop a cosmic event. Telling them only adds suffering to inevitability. Then we give them time to say goodbye, Talnex insisted. to grieve what they will lose before they lose it. Grief, observer Kalen said, with what might have been contempt, is an irrational response. It served no purpose. In the end, the collective voted. By a margin of 4,000 to 1,000, they decided not to inform humanity. Let them die without fear, without suffering, without the burden of knowledge. Only Talnex refused to accept a decision. The warning. Breaking the Prime Directive was an unthinkable act. In 3,000 cycles, no observer had ever directly contacted a species under study. To do so was to contaminate the experiment, to alter the natural course of development. But as Talnex watched Earth turning peacefully below his station, watched 8 billion humans going about their daily lives, unaware that they had only 3 days left to exist, he made a choice. He sent the message. It was brief, transmitted simultaneously to every major human government, every news network, every communications device on the planet. A simple warning in core English and 40 other human languages. This is Observer Talnex of the Collective. In 73 hours, a cosmic wave will reach your world. All human consciousness will end. We cannot stop this. We are sorry. You have time to say goodbye. The chaos that followed was immediate and overwhelming. Governments tried to verify the message. Scientists confirmed the incoming wave. Panic spread across every human world. But then something unexpected happened. Humans did not riot. They did not descend into violence. They did not spend their final days in despair. They said goodbye. The last 3 days. Talnex watched in amazement as humanity faced its extinction with something he had never seen before. Not courage exactly, though there was courage. Not acceptance, though there was that too. It was something deeper, something he had no name for. People traveled across continents to see loved ones one last time. Parents held their children. Lovers embraced. Strangers comforted strangers in the streets. Museums opened their doors for free, so everyone could see humanity's greatest art. Orchestras played in public squares. Poets read their work to crowds that numbered in the thousands. Humans recorded messages for the universe. We were here, they said. We existed. We loved. We mattered. On the final day, Talnex observed a scene that would stay with him forever. A small cemetery in a place called Vermont, where an old woman sat beside a grave. She was speaking to someone named Thomas, who had died 40 years earlier. "I'll see you soon," she said, touching the headstone. "I've missed you so much, every single day. But I stayed. I lived. I did the things we talked about. I saw our grandchildren grow. I watched the stars we used to look at together. I kept my promise." She smiled then, through her tears. "I kept you alive in here." She touched her chest. "And now I get to see you again. That's not so bad, is it?" She sat there peacefully as the sun set on humanity's last evening. Talnex felt something break inside him, some wall he did not know existed. For the first time in his long existence, he understood. Grief was not weakness. It was love persisting beyond death. It was the refusal to let go of connections that mattered. It was the price humans paid for caring deeply, loving fiercely, living fully. And in that moment, as he watched 8 billion humans face oblivion with grace and love and impossible courage, Talnex knew he could not let them die. "The impossible choice. What you propose is insanity," Observer Kalen said when Talnex presented his plan. "It has never been attempted." "Because we have never cared enough to try," Talnex replied. The collective had the technology to shield Earth from the quantum wave. It would require diverting power from every collective facility in the galaxy. It would reveal their existence to humanity. It would violate 3,000 cycles of precedent. But it could be done. "Why?" Observer Marin asked. "Why does this species matter more than the thousands that came before?" Talnex thought of the old woman in the cemetery. He thought of the parents holding children, the lovers embracing, the strangers comforting each other. The messages humans had sent into space, desperate affirmations that they had existed, that they had mattered. "Because they taught me something we forgot," Talnex said quietly. "That consciousness without connection is meaningless. That existence without emotion is just survival. that the pain of loss is proof of the beauty of having something to lose. He paused. They are not weak because they grieve. They are strong because they love so deeply that losing it breaks them, and they love anyway. That is not a flaw. That is the point. The collective debated for 18 hours. It was the longest deliberation in their history. And finally, by the narrowest margin imaginable, they voted yes. With 12 hours remaining, the collective began the largest coordinated effort in their history. Every station, every ship, every facility across the galaxy diverted power to Earth. They wove a quantum shield around the entire solar system, a bubble of stabilized space-time that would protect human consciousness from the phase shift. Humans watched the sky change. Strange lights appeared, dancing auroras that were not natural. Mathematical patterns wrote themselves across the atmosphere in colors that should not exist. Then the message came. Talnex's voice, transmitted to every human device. We are the collective. We have observed you for 3,000 of your years. We did not interfere because that is our law. But we are breaking that law now. Not because you are special, but because you taught us something we had forgotten. The shield will hold. You will survive. We are sorry we waited so long to say hello. The quantum wave hit. For a moment that lasted forever and no time at all, reality flickered. 8 billion humans felt something pass through them, a cold touch that reached into the core of their being. And then it was gone, deflected by the shield, scattered harmlessly into higher dimensions. Humanity survived. The celebration that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Not because humans were victorious, but because they immediately wanted to thank their rescuers. Within hours, messages flooded into space, directed at the collective. Thank you. We want to meet you. Why did you save us? What can we do to repay this? The collective faced a new crisis. They had revealed themselves. They could not simply disappear back into the shadows. For the first time in their long history, they had to interact with a species they had studied. First contact. Observer Talnex volunteered to be the first to meet humans face to face. He chose a simple form, humanoid enough to be comfortable, distinct enough to be honest about his alien nature. He materialized in the United Nations Assembly Hall, where representatives from every human nation had gathered. The silence was profound as they stared at him, a being of pure energy given temporary form, glowing softly with inner light. I am Observer Talnex, he said, his voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. I have watched your species for 800 cycles. I know your languages, your history, your art, your science. I have observed your wars and your peace, your cruelty and your compassion. And 3 days ago, I made a choice that broke 3,000 cycles of law. Why? Asked Ambassador 10, speaking for all of them. Why break your law for us? Talnex paused, searching for words that could bridge 3,000 cycles of difference. Because you grieve, he said finally. Because when you lose someone, you are broken, and yet you go on loving anyway. The collective are ancient, powerful, and alone. We do not love. We do not grieve. We exist without connection because connection means vulnerability. We thought that made us superior. He looked at the assembled humans. You taught me that we are wrong. You are not weak because you feel. You are magnificent because you feel so deeply that it destroys you, and you choose to feel anyway. That courage, that beautiful foolishness, that willingness to be broken by love, that is what makes you extraordinary. 3 days ago, I watched an old woman say goodbye to a husband who died 40 years ago. She had carried her grief all that time. She had let it shape her, but not define her. She had lived a full life while keeping his memory alive. And at the end, facing oblivion, she was grateful, not bitter. Grateful that she had something worth grieving. Talnex's form flickered with something that might have been emotion.
I am 3,000 cycles old, and I have never experienced anything like that. I realized then that we have been documenting life while never truly living. You showed me the difference. The exchange. In the months that followed, humanity and the collective began a relationship unlike any in galactic history. The collective shared technology that seemed like magic. Faster than light travel, matter creation, quantum computing, energy from vacuum fluctuations, medical science that could cure any disease, and extend human life indefinitely. But humans gave something back that the collective had not expected. They taught them to feel. It started small. Observer Marin attended a human concert and for the first time understood why art existed. The music carried emotion in wavelengths, and something in her consciousness responded. She felt something. She could not name it, but it was real. Observer Kalen, the one who had argued most strongly against saving humanity, visited a hospital. He watched families grieve for the dying and celebrate new births. He saw humans caring for the sick with tenderness that served no logical purpose, and something in him changed. One by one, the collective members who came to Earth began to transform. They formed friendships with humans. They learned to laugh. Some even learned to cry. "You are destroying us," Observer Vren said to Telnix one day. But there was no anger in the statement. Only wonder. We have been the same for 3,000 cycles. Now, we are becoming something else. Is that bad? Telnix asked.
Vren thought for a long time. I do not know. But yesterday I felt sad when a human friend told me about their childhood pet who had died. I felt sad for a creature I never met, dead for 40 years. That is illogical. And yet, I think I am glad I felt it. The gift, 5 years after first contact, the collective made humanity an offer. They would share everything, all their technology, all their knowledge, all their power. In exchange, they asked for just one thing. Teach us to be human, Telnix said to the United Nations Assembly. Not biologically, but philosophically. Teach us to love, to grieve, to hope, to dream. Teach us to be irrational and emotional and gloriously alive. We have spent 3,000 cycles existing. We want to learn to live. Ambassador Chen smiled. That's the easiest exchange in history. We'll teach you for free. But I have to warn you, once you learn to feel, you can never go back. Joy comes with pain. Love comes with loss. Hope comes with disappointment. Are you sure you want this? No, Telnix admitted. We are not sure. But that uncertainty, that fear of the unknown, that willingness to be vulnerable, I think that is the first truly human thing we have learned. The New Age. A decade after the quantum wave, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The collective had emerged from the shadows, no longer cold observers, but active participants in the cosmic community. They built cities alongside humans. They studied not just the physics of the universe, but its beauty. They learned to create art, to tell stories, to form friendships that mattered more than survival. And yes, they learned to grieve. When the first observer died, not from age, for they were effectively immortal, but from choosing to end her existence after experiencing enough of life. Thousands attended her memorial, humans and collective members together, sharing memories, celebrating a life well lived, and mourning the loss. Observer Telnix stood at the service and felt tears on his face for the first time. Real tears, born of real loss, proof of real love. She lived 3,000 cycles, he said in his eulogy, and in her last 10 years she lived more than in all the time before, because she learned to feel. She learned that existence without emotion is not living, it is just not dying. He looked out at the assembled mourners. Humans, you saved us. Not from the quantum wave, we could have protected ourselves. You saved us from an eternity of cold observation. You showed us that grief is not weakness, but evidence of love. That pain is not damage, but proof that we are alive. That being broken by loss means we have something worth breaking for. We thought we were superior because we did not feel. We were wrong. We were not superior. We were simply incomplete. The legacy. Today, 1,000 years later, the Human Collective Alliance spans half the known galaxy. Together they explore, discover, create, and protect. They've encountered hundreds of new species. and they approach each one not as observers or conquerors, but as potential friends. The collective's ancient archives now include a new section. Not just dry documentation of civilizations, but stories, personal accounts, emotions, memories of individuals who mattered, who loved, who lived, and who left the universe better than they found it. At the center of those archives is a single monument, a hologram of an old woman sitting beside a grave in Vermont, speaking to someone long dead, saying, "I kept you alive in here," as she touched her heart. Below it, an inscription in both human and collective languages. To humanity, who taught us that grief is the price we pay for love and that it is worth paying. Thank you for showing us how to live. And in the quantum space where collective consciousness dwells, where emotion now flows as freely as thought, something impossible has taken root. Hope, love, joy, and yes, grief. The beautiful, terrible, magnificent gift of being truly alive.